for extreme viewpoints, and it just creates more extremism because you see the extreme this way, and then you find yourself taking a position where you're rather than which sounds a little extreme also. So hopefully people will act responsibly. I think we all try to teach our kids the lesson of responsibility, and people we see it all over. We see what's going on in the old country where everyone's blaming somebody else rather than taking responsibility for their own lives and for their own actions. And what's a more important lesson than to teach responsibility to our kids and to ourselves. At any rate, that's not what everybody's thinking and talking about these things. So I thought as I've said before, the Ramban in his Perush on the Torah and his commentary on Chumash, there are so many important ideas which he talks about, which are foundations of faith, of belief, of thought, of human nature. And I wanted to, as we begin the first book, the beginning of the Chumash again, Parshas Bereishis has really in it so many of these important ideas. And I thought I'd talk about some and then also move a little bit into the Rambam. I said the topics I would choose were from the Ramban and the Rambam, which sort of gives me the freedom of going from back and forth. I'm not going to focus on, right now at least, one particular book or writing, although I would like to look at certain of the important letters or certain writings, maybe over a few week period, which both the Ramban and the Rambam wrote. But right now I'd like to focus on some of the things that the Ramban says in Bereishis, which again I think are essential and basic. The Ramban in the pasuk, Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmusenu. Let us make man. I forgot who. Somebody wrote a book now. Was it Rabbi Sachs? Let Us Make Man. Somebody. There's a book. I think there's a book out there, an English book called Let Us Make Man. I don't know who. I don't remember right now who wrote that book, but I remember seeing the book. That's what God says. Let us make man. And given the beautiful lessons that Rashi, brings to us, that the Gemara brings to us of humility, we learn the humility of God, that God says, takes advice from the creations. He's God after all. And he says, let us make man. Rashi says two things. He brings down one thing, that one medrash, that it shows God's humility, that he consults with the people who he is superior to. And it also shows that he's mishatef, and I would say God is a politician. Maybe he's not so. I'll be struck. Politician is interesting because in Hebrew, in Israel, it's a dirty word, politician. It's very interesting. In English, we say, you got to be political, and it's not used negatively. You have to be political sometimes. The first time I met Oded Ravivi, he said to me, "Ani lo politikai," and I said, "But actually, you are. That's what you do." But he was saying, and I learned then that politikai has a negative connotation here. But to be political shouldn't have it means being tactful, seeing roa et hanolad, seeing people's reaction, and be political, be smart when you say certain comments. So
politically correct, yeah.
Politically correct has a whole other connotation. But being God, before he creates man, he knows that, okay, I don't want to create jealousy amongst here I am creating the pinnacle of creation, mankind, and I want to, let everyone in on it. So the boss can bring in a new worker or a new department, but a smart boss, a political boss, will consult and get buy-in from the other employees before he brings in a new worker or a new supervisor or a new high-level manager or something. He'll get buy-in from the people. So God is sort of getting buy-in when he says, "Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmusenu." The Ramban, again, Rashi is, as often he does, in Rashi's Perush, we see lessons which are moral lessons, which teach us how to live our lives and how to interact with people. The Ramban teaches us that also, but here he goes in a very different direction. He says, Na'aseh Adam is almost a key into what the creation of man is all about. Na'aseh Adam, the fact that God doesn't say, E'eseh Adam, I am making man. Na'aseh Adam, God is saying, let us make man together. Me and the corporal world and the physical world. Let us come together, so to speak. God, which represents, who is the height of spirituality, of the opposite of Aretz. God creates the physical, mundane world. And God says there's going to be a special creation, something very different. And you've never seen this before, creation. Na'aseh Adam is something chadshani. It's completely new. It's completely, it's a chidush completely. The chidush is that this man is going to have a nefesh behemi, is going to be made out of flesh and blood and earth on one hand, but is going to have in it a neshama, a chelek elokam mima'al, which is concept which is very hard to understand what that means exactly, but it's a piece of God, so to speak, that we have in us. It's called an neshama. What's it called an neshama? Because the pasuk says also in Bereshis, "Va'ipach be'apav nishmat chayim." Only says that about man. It doesn't say that when God created the animals, "Va'ipach be'apav nishmat chayim." It's the most intimate act where God blows of himself, of his neshama. He blows and puts into man, only in man and of course woman. This group I have to be careful. It always means mankind, that God puts it into us, into humanity. Into humanity, God puts into humanity nishmat chayim, a piece of himself. So God says, Na'aseh Adam, I'm going to do something completely different. Here it is. It's the end of creation. It's getting to the end of the sixth day when I've created everything. It's all set up. And in the whole world, and the grass, and the trees, and the sun, and the moon, and the skies, and the water, and the birds, and the fish, and the animals. Now we're going to do something complete, and now for something completely different, right? Na'aseh Adam. We're going to make this creation, me and you. And this is going to be something unique, because it's going to have these two opposites, which are going to be together, put together in this being called mankind, called the
But wasn't he consulting with the angels who were not Bahami? They're not from the physical world.
Well, according to the Ramban, he was not consulting with them. He was saying it together with the earth. That's exactly it. That according to Midrashim, which like Rashi brings also, he was consulting with the angels. Exactly. Rashi brings it down. Thank you for being madgish that. That's very important. The Ramban is not understanding that way. The Ramban says that the Na'aseh Adam bara yesh me'ayin b'yom rishon levado ve'achar kach min hayesodot hahem hanivraim yatzar ve'asa. We know that the Ramban says this is a basic. The word bara is different than every word that creates is different. The word borei is to create. Yesh me'ayin. We can form matter. We can shape matter. What we can't do, what no scientist has been able to do, has been able to create or destroy matter. We can't create or destroy matter. That's Bria. That's God is, so God was Borei, according to the Ramban. This is not what our topic now, but God created everything at the beginning and formed it as each day progressed. Again, the way the Ramban explains the tahalich of creation, which I'm not getting into. It's above my pay grade here. But the bara is that everything was created, and he says naaseh kolomar. And listen to this exactly. This goes to your point. Kolomar naaseh ani v'haaretz, me and the aretz hanizkeret anachnu naaseh adam shetotzi haaretz haguf misodeha. The land will be motzi, will bring forth the body. Kasher astaba behema ubechaya. Kidechsiv vayitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama. Vayitviyetain hu yitbarach. But God will give haruach mipi elyon. Kidechsiv vayipach be'apav nishmat chayim. Va'amar, and he said, b'tzalmenu kidmusenu. Ki yidmeh l'shneihem b'matkonet. Man will be similar to both. We'll have the aspect of the guf, the physical, the aretz, begufo la'aretz, asher lukach mimena, v'yidmeh beruach le'elyonim, she'ena guf, v'lo tamut, and does not die like a body dies, but is a neshama which is always there, and those two things together will create this unique creation, the pinnacle of creation, which is mankind, which is humankind, and that's the Naaseh Adam, and that's what the Ramban says is the Naaseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmusenu. Now, over the commentators and in our philosophy, this is taken in sometimes different directions. What we find often amongst the medieval commentaries is this idea of a battle and a struggle. The battle and struggle between the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov, where Jews are into battles, we're into struggles. So there's the Yetzer Hara, there's the Yetzer Tov. There's this constant battle being fought between whether the physical is going to win out, and a person will follow their physical urges and their physical desires, and whether that's going to gain precedence and predominance in the human being, or whether the spirituality will win out and will tamp down and be able to rule over the physical. And the Ramchal of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto talks about this in the Derech Hashem. He's not the only one, where this constant battle, the way the Ramban sets it up, that God creates this tension in the human being, and it's a constant battle between the neshama and the aretz, between the shamayim and the aretz, taking place always within us. That's the human condition and the human tension which always exists between the neshama and the guf, and who's going to have predominance and who's going to win. And of course, we're told and we're enjoined that the mitzvos are to help us to allow the neshama to rule over the guf. That's one direction where the commentators take this idea of the Ramban. Now, there's another direction which I would say it's different. It's a little bit altered and maybe more, palatable, or appeals more maybe to us or to our generation, and it certainly has a Masorah in the commentaries. More so, I think you see this amongst the later commentaries. The Meshech Chochmah of Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, Rav Kook talks about this idea also of being mekadesh the chol. That it's not so much, and again, I don't think it's completely different. It's a slightly different angle than the first, the constant battle. But it's that God puts the physical, God created us in such a fashion of naaseh Adam, of the shamayim and the aretz, of the neshama, together with the guf, in order to allow the neshama to impact and influence and transform the physical, and to elevate and to sanctify the physical and make it so special. Likadesh, to be mekadesh the gashmiut. And that's why they're together in Naaseh. And that's the unique role and the special role of the human being on this world. And that's the pinnacle of creation, that God was there, and God is the ultimate in the spirituality. But God, to create physical, is something beyond him. It's beyond him. And it's outside. To say outside of him is hard, again, what exactly that means. But God created physical, and physical by its nature has depreciation, and it falls apart and it breaks, and God can't break or fall apart or be broken up. But God created, and God wanted a being to be able to come and elevate and take the Gashmiut and to sanctify it. And our role in this world, and again, it sees it a little differently than the battle. It still is a battle, I guess, in that in order to do this, we have to allow the physical to be influenced and impacted and transformed by the spiritual, by the neshama. But the Naaseh Adam, that it comes together, the purpose of the Naaseh Adam is to elevate, and we're to be mekadesh the chol. And the 7 days, the Shabbos is important for Shabbos, but Shabbos is also important for the 6 days of the week. It elevates the Gashmius, and Eretz Yisrael, and Israel is the place where we take a physical land and we elevate it through Ruchnius. And it's about taking the physical and transforming it from just regular Gashmias and elevating it to Ruchnius. So it's not just the Ruchnius is Ruchani, but like it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, and I think we did this maybe a couple of years ago, the Medrash, if anyone has seen it, I know we just started Bereshis, but if you're in the final Medrash Rabbah in Chumash, the final Medrash Rabbah in Chumash and Parshas V'zos HaBracha, if anyone takes a look at it, it's a beautiful, touching, emotional Medrash of there's somebody out there that's muting me. Okay. You can hear me now? Okay, thank you. There is, it's a beautiful Medrash Rabbah of God, of Moshe's death, and how Moshe's neshama doesn't want to leave. And at the end, it's Moshe, I mean, it's a long Medrash, but very, very interesting Medrash. But the end of it is that God calls to Moshe's neshama and from his body, and he says, Biti, refers to it as my daughter. Interesting. My daughter, come back home. I need you. I want you back. And the neshama says, God, you put me, you removed me from your presence, and you put me in a physical being, in this physical dirty world. And you put me in this being who elevated and sanctified this abode, this physical abode, to no end. And now his body has become kadosh and has become sanctified and has become a perfect place for me to stay. Please, I don't want to go. And he just doesn't want to go because the gashmius, the physical, has become ruchani, has become sanctified, become in a situation, become spiritual. And Moshe Rabbeinu reached that height, that pinnacle, in his body was transformed. Again, the Ramachal talks about this idea that the physical becomes, and we see this in a lot of different contexts. There are Gemaras about, there are Hasidic stories. I know just Hasidic, but there are stories about the exhuming bodies or reburying bodies and finding of tzaddikim and finding the bodies intact. And again, one could take these with whatever grain of salt you want. What's interesting is that the Gemara brings stories like this, and it's the idea is that the body becomes almost won't be affected by the regular transformed, and won't be affected by the regular happenings to physical bodies, and that's the Nasa Adam. Again, that's another angle on the Nasa Adam. At any rate, the Ramban sees Nasa Adam as the partnership between Neshama and Aretz coming together, and whether we see it as setting it up for the battle of the human condition, or whether we see it as the slightly different, also the battle, but the ability of the Neshama for us to impact the Aretz. The Ramban is saying, I think, a very, very significant point. And just another thing that we see in the Ramban, every time the Torah says in the Parsha, Vayar Elokim ki tov. Tov, the Ramban understands Tov is according to God, the plan, meaning God created it and he saw it was good, meaning he saw it fitted the plan that he wanted it to fit. That's the lashon of Tov. That it served the purpose. Vayar Elokim ki tov. He created this. He had a certain purpose in mind, and he saw, yes, this was right. This served the purpose. Now it says at the end, God created mankind at the end of creation. It doesn't just say ki tov. He says, and he v'hinei tov me'od. So tov me'od, if it serves its purpose, it serves its purpose. What's tov me'od? It's not like a report card. There's tov and there's tov me'od and there's mitzuyan, so everybody can get a good grade. Still had teachers, who would say, the parents would come and complain, my kid just got tov. So the teacher would say, Tov, he was good, but what do you mean? The Jewish parent, what do you mean? Tov is terrible. There's tov me'od, there's mitzuyan. So tov is like, it's not for Yidden don't get tov, Goyim get tov. What is this about? So it doesn't make sense. So tov here means tov, it fills the purpose. So if tov fills the purpose, what's tov ma'od? So the Ramban says something which is so interesting, and I think it fits in with what the Ramban said about Na'aseh Adam. After all of creation is complete, God sees that all of creation is tov ma'od. And what's part of tov ma'od? In some way or another, there are a bunch of midrashim which says that tov ma'od includes the bad. Tov ma'od, v'tam ma'od, ketam ribui v'hosif bayom hazeh lemar, lemor ki ba'avur, she'edaber bichlal v'yimtza ra b'ktsas. V'amar ki tov ma'od. It's ma'od tov, it's very good, it has more good, but it also includes the bad. There's a medrash which says, V'hinei tov ma'od. I don't know if you know this medrash, if you ever heard it. You know what tov ma'od is? Maves, death. To understand, before they ate sadas, they ate samaves, they would live forever. What exactly would happen? Where was maves? But there was some element that there could be, either it was built in with it, that's what could happen, and that's what obviously did happen. But built in was the idea that there would be death. Also, the Yetzer Hara. The Medrash says that the Tov Ma'od, that God created the Yetzer Hara also. God created the Sa'or Shada'isa, what it's called the Yetzer Hara, the yeast in the dough, just as the yeast helps us grow. The Ra, having some bad, we always know, and he says, V'zeh midas hapuranos, the fact that there's punishment. What makes the good complete good is there has to be a possibility for bad. If there's not this possibility, whether you take it the way the Ramchal understands it and others, that to choose good, the good would not be a complete and the best good without being able to choose good over bad. So necessarily, for there to be the complete good, there has to be bad. And to make it, and the Ramban very briefly here, and to understand fully what he's saying, it's very, very hard. But he says, Yomar shehu metukan hesder me'od, ki hara, listen to the Ramban's language, ki hara tzarich b'kiyum hatov. Ki hara tzarich b'kiyum hatov. The bad is necessary to preserve the good. I mean, again, to understand it in its fullness is something to think about, and how exactly we understand it. In Kabbalistic in terms, there's always the idea of the klipa, that the fruit is created with the peel. The peel is bitter and non-edible, but the klipa preserves the good. I'm not a Kabbalist, so I can't explain what the klipa completely is, but or even the drop.
What is olam shekulo tov?
Ulam, generally that's referring to the olam haba. Ulam shekulo tov. Where do you see that in the Ramban?
Sorry, in general, we daven for even in benching on Shabbos, we say olam shekulo tov, and we talk about olam shekulo tov. The olam haba, or it's after death, we don't know. And I'm not sure what the harachaman is on Shabbos, to be honest. I don't know what that is.
That's a good point. I haven't thought of that. It could be that we get to a place, with the Ra, just like, we have the battle and the whole life where there's the good and the bad and we choose. But once we get to the olam shekulo tov, which is one of the olam haba or after Tchiyat HaMesim, whatever period, according to the various commentaries we might be talking about, what that is olam shekulo tov. But maybe we do get to a world where, just like there is no Yetzer, I think we understand that there's no person gets to olam haba, there's no Yetzer hara. So maybe in some way we earn and get to that after the going through this world, we do get to the olam shekulo tov where that doesn't have Ra in it. That's a good question. I don't know what the answer is. It's a good question. But certainly in this world, what the Ramban is saying, that necessary, we use the term sometimes a necessary evil, the necessary bad to grow, just like the samamanim in the Beit HaMikdash, the spices, the pitum haktoret, which we say on, all the ktoret, had mixed into it also something which was not one spice, which was not a good smelling spice, and it was necessary. There's this idea in many areas where there is a necessary bad, either to help us grow, to appreciate the good, to become the good, to overcome the bad. It's only through the bad, even on so many different levels, whether it's Kabbalistic or practical, sometimes we never understand how good we have it until we have until we understand what the bad can be. So the Tov Ma'od requires, whether it's the Yetzer Hara, whether it's death, whether it's punishment, whether it's the struggles of bad, but I think it goes back to the Naaseh Adam, that man wasn't created just a beautiful spiritual being. It has to have the complexity of the bad built in.
And I think that we can all relate to, everybody bakes, and in every baking recipe, there's always a little bit of salt. Only sweet. You need the salt to balance it.
Yeah, that's very good.
They also claim that the salt brings out, a little bit of salt brings out the sweetness.
That's beautiful.
So it's not a good idea to leave out the salt.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's the same idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful idea. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk about. There's another amazing Ramban, which with so much in it, really in creation, and again, it relates to this first Ramban that we say, Hashem created on Yom HaShishi, and Vayikadesh Kivosh Kamachto Asher bara Elokim la'asot, which God created, again, bara, the Ramban, yesh me'ayin, la'asot. And there are different commentaries what exactly la'asot is coming to say. I don't want to get into the Meforshim now. But, the Rashi, it's almost for us la'asot, that God created it, and it's for us to work and to toil and to take what God created, yesh me'ayin, and to make out of it something more. The Ramban, though, goes in another direction, and he says, let me just back up and say, a lot of what a theme in the Ramban throughout his commentary is the concept of ma'aseh avot siman labanim, that the Ramban sees kernels from which sprout whole plants, whole trees from those kernels. And the Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim is that there's so much which is hidden in every little interaction, statement, action by the Avot, the Imahot, in that it's foreshadowing, but it's encapsulated in it is what will come out Labanim. And the Ramban sees it, and I think he sees it on many different levels. It's not just Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, that you see Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim. I think, he says it even as we're going to see in a moment, Maaseh of God is a siman for humanity, in a way. And I think even amongst maybe in a way, and I haven't seen that he says it, but I'm not sure that Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim doesn't also apply to people in our generation. That things that grandparents have done or have gone through, you see sometimes being carried out and come to fruition and grow and multiply amongst their progeny. Again, I'm saying that of my heart says this idea. I haven't seen the Ramban say it, but I think you do see in the Ramban that there's very often this concept of the kernel, and from the kernel sprouts forth the similar or outgrowths to the trees and to the fruit which come from that kernel. And he says the same thing la'asot. It's a beautiful, beautiful Ramban where he says, Asher bara Elokim, what God created in the 6 days of creation, he created that la'asot, to sprout and to blossom in all of the history of the world. That the 6 days of creation encapsulize in them all of the what happens in the history of mankind, in the history of the world. I think we might have mentioned about the 2,000 years of the Medrash, which he's basing this on, that 2,000 years the world will be tohu vavohu, 2,000 years Torah, 2,000 years Chevlei Mashiach, and then after that, Mashiach's going to come. The Ramban takes it a step further where he really understands that he sees within the creation that takes place over the 6 days of creation, the Ramban sees all of humanity play out in just a beautiful, beautiful way. And he says that you see that it's nirmaz in each day of creation what will take place in the world, and from each one is, you can speak about and think about each one is, I think, in itself a lesson. But I'm going to try briefly to just go through some of what he says. He says, listen, the first day God created light. The first day created light. B'yom Rishon, the only thing that God created was or. And that's the 1,000 years that Adam Harishon was supposed to live. We know that he donated 70 years to David HaMelech, but Adam HaRishon is referred to by the Medrash as Oro Shel Olam, the light of the world. Why Adam HaRishon? Well, why was he the light of the world? It's an interesting question. In our Masorah, we don't say Elokei Avra, Elokei Adam. We say Elokei. We go back from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We start our prayers with Avos, Imos, Avram. We don't talk about, we mention in the Rosh Hashanah davening, Adam, Adam was the first person, but there's a certain status nobody else is referred to as Oro Shel Olam, the light of the world. What was it about Adam that made him the first 1,000 years that corresponds, the only thing that God created in that first day, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, the Oro Shel Olam is Adam HaRishon. Why was he Oro Shel Olam? The Ramban tells us. He says, Shehi was Adam Haya Oro Shel Olam Makir et Bor'o. Ve'ulai lo avad enosh of avodah zara ad shemes Adam HaRishon. Why was Adam Oro Shel Olam? Because Adam had something very special. Adam was created. Everybody else, was born and as a baby and grows and has a mother and a father. And here Adam is, there's no mother and father. Adam, like it's natural for us to know a mother and father, and it's natural. It was natural for Adam lahakir et boro. That's the natural state of mankind. That's the light of the world. That's the purpose of the world, is light. Vayihi or, is that man should come to recognize God. That's what b'sach hakol, b'sof hadavar, that man should be able to come lahakir et boro. That's the light of the world. Now Adam had from inception, from creation. Adam, only Adam. Everybody else heard it secondhand, believed it, came to it through logic. Avram Avinu, God revealed himself, God talked to him, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe. It's all very good. It's all very important. But Adam, from his creation, from a natural way, he had the natural light of Oro Shel Olam. And it tells us, Shehu Makir et Boro. And it could be, he says, he even wants to say that all the time that Adam was alive, maybe there was no Avodah Zarah. It couldn't be Avodah Zarah because it developed later, because as long as Adam was alive, that couldn't be, because he can't be makhish in a God who bore you as parents bear you. So Adam was Oro Shel Olam, Makir et Boro. That's day one. Day two, God introduces something very interesting into the world. The ability to separate, to discriminate. It's not popular nowadays. Everything's the same. There's, you have to, what's it called? Everybody has equal experience and equal narrative and equal this. But people, there's nothing wrong, again, not using discrimination in a bad way, but to make havdalot as humans. The ability lahavdil, and that's what God creates in the second day. Vayom hashani v'hi mavdil shebo hayu muvdalim Noach ubanav hatzadikim min harishayim, and that took place the first time in the world. The first time that God brought in the second 1,000 years, that God said, there's going to be an ark. The wicked are going to die out in the flood, and the righteous are going to be preserved. Not everything's the same. Not everybody's the same. Not every action is the same. Not everything has the same value. That was Noach. That was taught to us by Havdalah. In the second day, in that little kernel, which represented separation, discrimination, the ability to make Havdalot, that played out in the flood, and then the Havdalah of Noach and the rest of humanity. The third day was things sprouted forth from the land. היבשה, נראית היבשה והצמיחה ועשיית פירות. הוא האלף השלישי המתחיל בהיות אברהם בן מ"ח שנה. Again, I think we've maybe talked about this. I'm sure people have heard this before. Ramban is going to say, by the way, each 1,000 years begin a little bit, just like the nighttime begins before the day. It's almost a little bit before the 1,000 years. I always tell people the way you remember the Jewish calendar, the day Avram Avinu was born in 1948. Not 1948 from CE, AD, but 1948 from the creation. From creation, coincidence, not coincidence, whatever you want to say. He was born 1,948 years from the creation of the world. It says he started v'hanefesh asher asu b'charan. The Mefarshim want to say he was 52. Ramban has a language 48, where his years seem to, they wonder where he gets that from. But whatever, he was just at the beginning of Avraham's bringing, and Avraham, the Rambam, to bring in the Rambam, also the Rambam says Avraham had alfei talmidim, alfei people who he taught. We know that Avraham created fruit. That's what he did. He taught people about God. Avram and Sarah taught people about God. They taught their children and their grandchildren, and they just taught people, and people flocked to him because he taught them, and they taught, and they created the fruit of people. The Az Hechel Lekro, it says, B'Shem Hashem, V'tzamach Tzemach Tzadik, Ki Mashach Rabim Ladat et Hashem. And that's what they darshan that Nefesh Asher Asu B'Charan, V'tziva et Beito ve'et Banav Acharav. It says only about Avram Avinu. It doesn't say it about Noah, that he will teach his children V'shamru derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat, that they will do charity and righteousness. And that his children accepted that with Matan Torah b'Sinai, and the Beit HaMikdash was built, and then all the mitzvos were given and able to be accomplished. And the Ramban says Shehem Perot HaOlam, and that in the end the fruit is not just the learning Torah, but the doing of mitzvos, of bringing the learning and the ideas to fruition, bringing it to the physical world like fruit brings blossoms and goodness and good taste to the world. So too the mitzvos bring to the physicality. If we can return to what we were saying before, it brings it into this physical world. Avraham was born in 1948. Yitzchak was born 100 years later, in the year 2048. The 400 years from Yetzias Mitzrayim was counted from the birth of Yitzchak. 2,448 was the year of Yetzias Mitzrayim. 480 years after Yetzias Mitzrayim, 2,828, 480 years after 2448 plus 480. It says when Shlomo is, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, 2928, 2,928 years, the end of the third thousand, the first Beis HaMikdash is now built. This first Beis HaMikdash is now built. It says when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash, I'm not making up the dates. Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash. It says 480 years from the year they left Mitzrayim, Shlomo completed the building of the Beis HaMikdash. So Avraham, 1948, 100 years later is Yitzchak. 400 years, the 400 years of Galut Mitzrayim is counted from Yitzchak to 2448. 480 years later brings us to 2928, to the end of the third thousand, where the first Beis HaMikdash is now gone up, and it's now the Tkufa of the lights of the world, of the Shemesh, of the Areach, of the Kochavim, of the lights of the Batei HaMikdash. The two Beis HaMikdash, the two Batei HaMikdash, the first was 410 years stood, the second was 420 years, with 70 years in between. So again, 900 and so on years, the 4,000 years again is the years, as the Ramban says, of the Me'orot, Hagadol, Hakatan, Hakochavim, the Elef Hadalid Hechel. It began Kasher Nivna Bayit Rishon, Ayin Bet Shana Acharei Binyano. 72 years after the completion of the first was Binyan, the 4,000 began, and Bnei Yisrael had Or. The Beis Hamikdash is referred to as also like Adam Arishon, Oro Shel Olam, that gave the light, the eyes of the world, just like Adam understood and was makir. The Borei Olam, the Beis Hamikdash, is the vehicle for humanity coming, for God to put his presence among us so we can come to appreciate, to lahakir et Borei Olam through the Beit HaMikdash. And
Yeah,
then,
they say that Yerushalayim is Oro Shel Olam.
Right. Yerushalayim, at least the song says that. Yes. And where that comes from, we have to look where that's a quote from, but it must be from somewhere. I'm sure Shweki didn't make it up, or whoever it is. But that's, and again, very quickly, as our time is running out, the 5,000 is Yishri, that now the Shratzim, I'm sorry, the creepy crawly things, the animals that are coming to come around the world, and we don't want to the disparage, but he's saying Shartzu Hamayim Nefesh Chaya V'Ofi Ofef Al Haaretz. Ramaz says the Rambam Le'elef HaChamishi HaMatchil Kuf Ayin Bet Shana Achar Churban Habayit, after 172 years after the Churban Bayit Sheni, and that's when the Umot HaOlam, like the many fish and like the animals, come and inhabit the world into the sixth day also, where the Behemot and the Chayot are created. The Az Nivra Adam, and then in the middle, towards the end of the sixth day, is when God creates mankind, which represents the Geula and Memshalto of Mashiach, and it's the end of the period after all the creation of the fish and the birds and the animals of Behemot and the Chayot. Comes Adam, who now has his role in the creation of in the continuation. And I'll get to it. I see Rav Ruvain is here. Shalom Aleichem, Rav Ruvain. We'll get to it. I want to talk. He talks about this end of the sixth year, and the Ramban, even though he's against, and the Rambam, and I'll make a note to talk about this next time, against predicting when Mashiach is going to come, but like so many others, says you're not allowed to predict when Mashiach has come, and then he goes on to predict when Mashiach is going to come. But Mitzvah Hashem will see that. But the Ramban, again, this La'asos, the Ramban's idea is that it encompasses all 6,000 years of creation. It's good to see everyone again, at least partially. Thank you very much. And
Thank
you. It was
look
amazing.
forward to being able to see everyone in person.
And this
Thank you, Rav
Ramban is
Stavsky.
again of
Thank you
what
so much.
pasuk?
Thank you.
This Ramban that you taught
Thank you.
was what pasuk again?
Hashem bara Elokim la'asot. On that word,
La'asot.
la'asot. Yes.
La'asot.
Well, it's
Thank you.
inside.
I somehow missed between, where did the fourth day go?